public input related to the agenda? There'll be another opportunity if you want it.
I'll see if it applies. My name is Kim Pika. I'm a Barnstead resident. On the first day of school this year, I sent an email to several individuals across various departments at PMHS. Aware of how busy the first day typically is, I made it clear in my message that the matter I was raising wasn't urgent and that I fully understood how hectic their schedules must be. I encouraged them to respond whenever they had time. To my surprise, I received a call back almost immediately. This was not a complaint, but rather a need I had, and I was deeply touched by how quickly they responded. I've had the pleasure of meeting with this group on several occasions, and the support they have provided has been nothing short of extraordinary. I genuinely feel that they didn't help me just because it's part of their job, but because they are truly good people who care. At the last school board meeting, Carol spoke about the school's culture and climate, referencing the survey that had been sent out to staff and parents. She talked about how people are starting to feel more positive. I shared this story with you because I believe these individuals deserve genuine recognition for the meaningful impact they have had. My gratitude is heartfelt as their efforts truly made a difference. In contrast, the praise given to the superintendent during the August meeting felt insincere. It centered on goals that have not been clearly communicated to the community, leaving us uncertain about their significance or achievement. Without evidence to substantiate these accomplishments, the praise lacks authenticity. As a community, we value support and genuine progress and accountability. Clear communication is essential for fostering trust and ensuring that recognition is both deserved and meaningful. At the August meeting, the board members discussed goals that were made in 2019. One board member stated that the stuff that we asked the superintendent to do, a lot has been done. Cost savings, processes, policies, a lot of things we can't even talk about that are non-public. We have had some growing pains along the way, but we have stayed the path of what we hired someone to do. People have their opinions out there, but they don't necessarily know what we have had to do. Another member states that she was the chair of the Sprint and Search Committee. She states, "I want people to remember that none of this existed. This man put all these things in place for us. We had no goals. I'm proud of what we put in place and what we have accomplished." After hearing what these board members were saying, I was left confused. What were these goals, and what has the board done to address the ongoing concerns in our district? Over the past year, several community members have come forward to share their concerns. These concerns include declining student enrollment, the impact of de-leveling classes on student learning, persistent concerns about special education services, perceived favoritism in funding allocation, such as for the robotics team and the TL Storer camp, as well as the significantly higher funding allocated to the athletics department compared to all other co-curricular activities combined. The most pressing issue that continues to be brought to your attention is the staff turnover and toxic leadership style of our current superintendent. It was suggested that a chairperson on the board has the authority to appoint 2 or more members of the board to form a committee to interview the employees that have left. Was that committee ever formed? If so, what were the findings? And if not, why has this not been prioritized?
Can I just interrupt for a minute? We need to have no attacks on people.
Okay.
So make sure you temper what you're saying, please.
The strength of our schools depends on the people who work in them. Teachers, administrators, and support staff are the foundation of any successful school system, and we cannot afford to overlook their concerns. When the board focuses solely on praising one person for goals that remain unclear to the community while failing to address our concerns, it creates a lack of trust and confidence in our school board's leadership. I urge the board to address these concerns directly and to provide clear, actionable steps to resolve these issues that matter most to students, staff, and families. Out of respect for the 30-plus employees that left for numerous reasons who were dedicated to our children and schools, we need to know that the school board, who oversees the current leadership, is addressing these concerns, not just moving on and giving vague kudos and dismissing the current concerns that were brought to your attention.
I just want to say that the goals should have been posted online. That's the impression I had.
They were.
That, okay, so the goals that we referred to in August were posted online. And now tonight, we're going to be reviewing more goals for our school. So it appears to be a slow process, but we're trying really hard to do it the right way. So if you want to go online, it would be under the SAU. So,
It's a news story on all of the school's websites.
okay. All right, thank you. Did you have anything? Anyone else? Okay. Before we go on, I just wanted to take a moment to recognize Lila Duncan for her service to our school board and to our communities. Lila's been on the school board for 10 years, I believe, and so she's had to resign as of next Monday, but this is her last Prospect Mountain school board meeting, and I just want to say thank you on behalf of everyone, students, staff, school board. I won't ask you to speak, unless you want. That's a lot of years, and we do appreciate it. Thank you. We appreciate you. A lot of hours. All right.
Make a motion, to accept the agenda as presented.
Second.
Any additions to the agenda tonight? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, approval of minutes.
Make a motion to approve the minutes from October 15th, 2024.
Second.
Yeah, we're gonna go next.
I made the motion, Eunice seconded.
Sorry for the
okay.
interruption. So, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Abstain. Oh,
All right.
as well, sorry.
So we're going to move our grand piano to the front of our agenda tonight because we don't want to keep a staff member all evening. So there is a proposal to take a donation of a grand piano. Did you want to speak to that, or?
Hi, my name is Kirk Young. I was hired this year as the choral music teacher here at Prospect Mountain High School. And when I came on board in April and interviewed with Matt in the room, and I took a tour, I noticed that there was no real substantial grand piano here at the school to use for either concerts or performances or for the community, for drama productions to use or dance productions or whatnot. So it was one of the things I wanted to do here in the fall really quickly, was to find an instrument that we could use both on our stage and in our classrooms to help build some momentum and build some interest in our choral program. And I found a Samick SIG 50 in Nashua through a mutual music educator friend of mine who knew the family wanted to get rid of it, and through negotiations with them and through hopeful discussions with you, I'd love to be able to accept that instrument for us to get in and get tuned and get ready, because we've got a concert coming up on December 19th, both Mr. Stevens and I, and we're looking forward to having this instrument with us on stage. Happy to take any questions you might have.
Does anyone have any questions?
Make a motion, to accept the donation.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? You got it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, onward. Reports, we're on to Heidi's report, finance report. Anyone have questions, or you want to make a statement of any sort, Heidi?
I'll just take any questions. The negatives that you see on the summary, the principal's office, it's the new position. Library, we have one full-time librarian rather than a part-time. The improvement of instruction, that will always be negative until the end of the year. And then any other questions?
Any questions for Heidi?
I just wanted to say thank you. I know that you and Tim have been working on the budget and reducing the budget and really looking at it closely. So, no, I think that that's great. It's really,
We've had two
I mean, you-
successful meetings, haven't we, Heidi?
yeah, and to the budget committee.
All right, no other questions for Heidi? All set? All right, we're on to our principal's report. It was quite lengthy. Did you have something you wanted to highlight? Did everyone have a chance to read it? I'm trying to do the Jason thing. I know you had some changes that you wanted to make.
Yeah, first and foremost, perhaps the really exciting stuff is all the slideshows related to some good news throughout the school. It's definitely worth reading, keeps you abreast of all the special happenings. The other thing, two recommendations on the part of PMHS administration. The first one is related to a retake policy. So currently in our school, we have no policy for retaking summatives. Doesn't exist anywhere. And in fact, it changes from each department, and in some cases between multiple teachers in each department. So this policy sets a baseline for us as a school. So every kid has the same starting point, every kid has the same set of rules, et cetera, et cetera. This policy was also written through 3 or 4 drafts with all of the department heads. So every department head weighed in, and I also liaise with Matt as well for that curriculum piece. My recommendation would be to adopt this policy, and then since quarter 2 has already started, to have it be in effect starting semester 2. And as a reminder, over the summer, we're constantly updating and tweaking the handbook. So this will allow us to have a semester with an actual policy, and then we can go from there. So that's
We
the
can't call it a policy.
procedure.
Procedure.
Policy would be too formal.
Yeah. So I could change that readily,
Change it,
easily
please.
enough.
I'm
And
getting nudged over here.
Doing great.
My question, Dave, was.
Yes.
So it says 7 calendar days. First of all,
Yep.
I think it's great to have a policy for
Uh-huh.
retakes. Let me just say that. And I noticed that you had the, clause at the end that said if policy, that could change extension, because I do worry about the 7 days. That's my only concern of calendar days.
Yep.
And I just wanted to make sure that, if a student was absent, if a teacher was sick, or if something happened, that would still,
Yeah, and that's precisely why that passage is written at the end, for that exact reason.
Okay, yep.
And I wrote it broadly enough where
great.
good reason the
If you guys are
principal.
comfortable with it and you've all worked together, then I think it's fantastic.
We can have a vote now. We don't have to wait till action items. So can I have a motion, please?
I make a motion to approve the updated PMHS procedure on retake summatives.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we have that one.
The other update is the recommendation. You see the screenshot on the backside has the full dress code section from the handbook is to strike the last bullet point related to hats and head coverings. My recommendation is really very straightforward with this one. Right now, we have a district policy that says you can't wear hats. Coming into this school with a fresh set of eyes, we regularly have days, plural, and in fact, weeks, where we override, quote unquote, said policy. From my perspective, a policy is a policy, just like any other policy, being it bullying or whatever. We don't have rules that allow a kid to buy a bracelet and be able to bully for an entire week. But we do have rules that allow a student to buy a bracelet and wear a hat for the entire week. For me, as the principal, and I can speak for the other administration, it's hard when it's piecemeal. Sometimes you can, sometimes you can't, and everything in between. My recommendation would either be we don't allow it at all and honor that policy as it's written, or we simply say students can wear hats.
I make a motion students can wear hats. I have my letters I have sitting on top of my refrigerator from every year from the whatever civics class it is to ask to wear hats. So I make a motion students can wear hats.
I did put out feelers to the
Just getting
teachers.
started.
I got
Someone else to write about that.
a handful of some good conversations with teachers. Perhaps the biggest concern that teachers had were related to could it affect, teacher and student involvement or being able to pay attention, et cetera, et cetera. And my simple conversation and retort, so to speak, were, you know, if a student wants to disengage in a classroom, it doesn't really matter what's on their head. They're going to choose to disengage, and it's a classroom management piece with that teacher at that point. A couple other people mentioned about earbuds, and I simply pointed out that roughly half the population, mostly the females, but not all, if they really want to hide a, quote, earbud, they just have to fold their hair a certain way. Hoods and hats aren't really going to change that. So that's my recommendation. Happy to entertain questions, thoughts, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, we had a motion, I need to
Second.
say something, but we had a motion, and
Second.
I need a second, so you seconded. So, I brought to David my concerns about classrooms, academics with hats and hoods. So, I was going to propose that we have a compromise that they're allowed to wear hats anywhere else but in an academic classroom. Because I feel like it's going to create more discipline problems having the hats and the hoods because of the buds. And I get what you're saying about hair. I do understand that. Although I don't want to single out the females. We have some guys with longer hair too. But I was thinking that might be a good compromise, but again, that's just my point of view. And I did bring it to David earlier in an email that having been a teacher for years, disengagement does happen, absolutely. But if I can see clearly that child's face, I can address it better than if they have a hat or a hood on. That's just my perspective as a teacher.
I agree, and I would support that 100%. I also don't think that hats and hoods worn in the classroom are a sign of respect. And I think that in a culture when we talk about connecting and socialization, that saying that you can have your hood on and your hat on in a classroom is a good practice. I also don't think that hats and hoods should be worn in an assembly. Just like when you say the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag or the national anthem is being sung, you're asked to remove your hats and your hoods. So I agree with Carol. I would rather have a compromise. I understand that it is difficult for administrators. However, buying a bracelet for a week is also quite a long time, and maybe I would look at that policy, and maybe I would just do a bracelet for a day. But that's an aside.
And that would mean they could wear them everywhere else, in my mind.
Yeah, I
Cafeteria,
agree.
study halls. I'm talking
Yeah.
about academic classes. I'm not talking about study
I'm
halls
not
per
a fan
se.
of hats and hoods, and
Could each teacher say, if a teacher feels the same way that those two, could the teacher just request the students in that class not to wear hats?
that makes it really hard on teachers.
I think it sets up a bad dynamic between
Yeah.
teachers. Then we have the bad guy and the good guy,
Yeah.
you know.
Oh,
But, I
Mr.
mean,
Bordeaux
obviously
is
the
fine.
board-
He lets us wear hats, but Mrs. Pierce is so mean, she won't let us. And that's what
And
happens.
we all know that about you.
Right,
you
that's
know.
fine. That's-
That's just my point of view, and I did share it with David today. He said they had teacher feedback was very much like mine, I'm hearing, right? They were saying about the buds and the disengagement, or you're saying that's my feedback? I couldn't quite.
Really, I put out several feelers, and I think 4 or 5 members of the staff reached out to me, a couple by email, a couple in a conversation. 1 or 2 of those people mentioned disengagement and earbuds, and the rest of the people were more or less indifferent, and a couple other people were in favor of not constantly having to quote-unquote police it.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah,
That's why I would say if it was going to be academic classes, it would have to be everyone's. Can't just be 1 or 2. But again, we can take a vote, and we can.
Right.
Any feedback from
Can I
you,
get
Ryan?
Wyatt's feedback?
Yeah, I just want to say, first of all, one thing that sticks out to me is almost every day, especially students who are comfortable wearing hats and enjoy wearing hats, they come into school and then the first thing they hear when they walk through the front door is, take off your hat, take off your hood. That can set, and I know it's a small action, but that can set such a negative tone to those students' day that even without their hat or hood on, the rest of the day that those dozen students are not going to be engaged. They're going to have no want to learn because they've already been, I don't want to say put down, but they've already had that negative interaction first thing in the morning.
So you're saying my compromise wouldn't work very well? Like if they walk in the building, they would still have their hats on?
Right, like in the hallways would be
In
fine.
the hallways would be fine, study halls.
I don't know if the compromise would be beneficial just due to the fact that like it's at the same point you're spending 90% of your day in an academic class. So as soon as you go through that door, it's going to be the same effect. Like walking from like saying you can have it from the parking lot to the building, but you can't have it in the building. It's pretty much the same effect, just on a different scale. The way I view it.
So would you rather have hats or no hats?
I would rather have hats because back to the point of if students, and I can say this firsthand because I've been this way, especially when I was in middle school, if students want to engage, they're going to engage. If they don't want to engage, they're going to find a way to not engage. I could find 150 ways not to engage using a t-shirt alone. So I feel like it would be more of an all or nothing scenario.
Yeah, I don't feel like it's necessary. Sometimes it's related to engagement, certainly, but
Some of it is,
I
yeah.
guess I just feel like it's a old school sign of respect.
It is.
So that's.
Yeah.
But
I mean, it's
I'm
definitely,
old
we're
school.
showing our age, Ann.
Yeah, I'm showing my age. So
Well, I was gonna go, you can't wear a hat inside at all.
That's what we have right now, right?
But this has come across the table, like if the pendulum just keeps swinging, right? So if this is what the students want, if this is what the administration wants, I fully support it. To your point, out of respect, I might tell my son when he gets to high school, when you walk in that door, that could be something parents address, like on a family basis if they want, but as long as we're not seeing disruptions and behavioral issues because of it, give it a try and see how it works for the next few months. If it's causing reason for concern, we can always bring it back.
Yeah. I think to Wyatt's point of disengagement, like my 8th grader doesn't really enjoy school, and when he has a day when he can wear his hat, it's better. So he's more engaged, he's not like frustrated at teachers, he feels like he can show up as he is. So I do think it can make a big difference.
So it's part of his identity, is what you're saying.
Right, and he's got like crazy hair, so if he wears a hat most of the day and then he takes it off, then his hair's gonna be like all over the place. So he wouldn't be happy with take it off when you come in the classroom.
Did you have some feedback too?
I didn't know if I was allowed to, but I'd like to. I've been very surprised at how receptive the students have been to the new phone policy. It's actually gone pretty well. It has been difficult to police what is considered an area where you can have it and one where you can't. I also view this as a win back to the students. Like they've handled some of the other changes pretty well. This would be very well received.
And I think off that point, if you kind of present it in that way, then that'll have kind of like that rolling positive effect.
Well, now I'm torn.
And to be clear, the plan with our administrative team is to do precisely that, to use this as a catalyst to say, we understand the phone has been different this year and it's hard for a lot of you. And we recognize that this is something that's important to a lot of kids and we want to give you this opportunity. But you've got to work with us. You've got to stick with the phones and make sure when you're not in class, you're not using them. And this is an example
so
of
we're
your
using
school.
the hats as a token, basically, as a bargaining chip, if you will. Just to really soften that climate and culture and really pump them up, and you can wear
Well,
your
I mean,
hat.
it might be a good boost to their morale. I mean, we do want to boost morale in school,
Yes.
so, okay. I guess I'm gonna have to. All right, anyone else have any input before we take a vote? All right, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
Sure, I'll be opposed.
Okay. You got it.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for your input. I appreciate it. All righty. Anything else, Dave? Did you want
Nope,
to?
I have nothing else unless anyone else has any questions.
It's nice to get the report early, but we also make sure that they're posted online for parents to read also.
Right.
It's very important. Okay, we have our counseling report, lots of activities around colleges and college apps. Did anyone have any questions about this report? Obviously Linda's not here, but
Can I give a shout out to the counseling department on this report? The career fair the other day was spectacular.
Oh, good.
Kids were engaged. I managed to get around and talk to a lot of business people, vendors who were here, they all seemed thrilled. It was really, really well done. The very next day, we sent 50, I believe, 40-something students to Trade-a-Palooza in Concord, where Mike Rowe spoke. The Commissioner of Education was there. The Governor-elect was there. Great events. As you already know, we've expanded the number of students in vocational programs from Prospect Mountain by 50% compared to previous years. And I think as of right now, all but 2 of those additional spots are filled. Students are taking advantage of those things. This counseling office is doing a fantastic job. Nothing we've asked them to do have they balked at. They've shown up and they've expanded these opportunities for students. So I just want to give them all a shout out.
Right?
I think the report itself really speaks to the fact that there's a nice balance between college visits, PSATs, ASVABs, career pathways, but then also the Trade-a-Palooza, which I've heard fantastic things about. So I agree, this report really speaks to the fact that the counseling department is really trying to reach all learners and all students for their pathways.
Any other comments, questions?
I have a question with the college application pack. Is that allotted just for seniors, or can juniors or underclassmen take advantage of that?
It's designed, it's run by several of our counselors. It's a pack kids sign up for, and kids can sign up for it if they want to do the, I'm spacing on the name, the universal application.
Common App.
Thank you. So that's what a lot of kids are using it for. There's a couple kids using it for tweaking like their essays and stuff, or just a particular college, but we're getting pretty decent numbers with kids taking
No, I
advantage
think
of
it's
it.
great.
I think it's great too. I mean, kids get nervous about applying. Yeah.
It's open to everybody.
I will say I was in the pack and I found it very helpful, especially sorting through, because Common App can be tricky with asking random weird little questions that make no sense. And it was helpful with that kind of stuff. It was mostly seniors in there, but I think, it's definitely open to other grades to help prepare.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
All right, well, thank you to the guidance department. That's a great report. All right, building and grounds. Did anyone I had a question about building and grounds. There you go. I was wondering with the sign, since it's going to be at the end where the current sign is it going to be controlled from the SAU office? Is it going to be controlled from here? So we can do that.
So it can actually be controlled by anybody who has the app and a password from their phone.
Okay, all right. So David would probably be in charge of that?
Do you want to?
No, I'm not doing it.
Dave will have staff who do it.
Okay, so I just was curious about that because I know that the internet is far reaching, but that was a little far for me. All right, anyone else have a question for building and grounds report?
I have a question about the repairs to the sidewalks.
Yep.
We just have patchwork out there, is that what?
So we just met, I'll talk about capital planning right now and then I won't have to under my report. So I'm a little behind, having missed a couple of weeks recently, and we started our capital planning meetings at the high school yesterday. We'll finish by the end of this week. We will still bring the revised 5-year capital plan to the board in December, which is my annual target. So we'll be on time even though we're doing it a little later than usual. Somewhere between, Jim estimates 25% and a third of that refurbishing has been completed, and we have $15,000 a year in that capital plan for 3 more years to finish that work, so that by the end of a 4-year period, it's all been done. So you are still seeing a combination of the old deteriorated surfaces and the new surfaces.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Anyone else have a question, building and grounds? All right, Wyatt, you're up.
All right, I'll try to make it quick. Athletics-wise, I just wanted to shout out the girls soccer team for the short run in playoffs. Still a playoff team, and that's amazing. And again to the boys soccer team to making it to the Final Four. Very tough fought game with Mascoma. It was great to watch.
They did a great job, didn't they?
And even though it was an hour drive from here, there was a lot of the student body there, which was great to see. I wanted to give a shout out to the National Honor Society, specifically all the new inductees, because their induction was last week, so it was great. A lot more people, I don't want to say more, but there was a lot of people this year that joined, so that was good to see. And then couple different Halloween activities, NHS's Halloween trick-or-treat night in the hallways, which I believe there was over 200 people who passed through, which is great
Wow.
to see in a short couple hours. And then the seniors hosted a Halloween dance, which had about 100 people in attendance. And then upcoming December 6th, that evening in the cafeteria, the senior class is doing a spaghetti dinner fundraiser. So it's going to be a full 3-course set of meals for just $10 for adults. So
Oh, wow.
you guys should all go. I'm not biased in any sort of way. And then lastly, I just want to say that one thing I like about being the student body representative here is that sometimes students will come up to me with questions or have inquiries about why things are done and what they can do to, I don't want to say change, but just get a better understanding of things. And one thing that's been prevalent is the search filter on Chromebooks and like content filtering. So in order for me to better answer their questions, I reached out through Principal Latchaw to the tech department, and they were able to send me a slideshow and an email better explaining the content filtering, state laws regarding that. And now I have a better understanding, so I'm able to convey that to the student body and hopefully answer some of their questions.
Great.
From time to time, when we put in a content filter, it works automatically. So it is essentially making judgments based on, it's a computer program, right? So it sees keywords and might just go, oh, you can't have access to that. A teacher whose students might be doing research can always reach out to the tech department and say, hey, I have kids doing research on a controversial topic, so they're doing searches on these keywords, and I'd like them to be able to have access. And they have the capacity to customize the filters.
Great. Thanks for that question. That was good. Any other questions for Wyatt? All right, we're on to Mr. Christie, athletic.
All right. So I'm going to go over a few kind of accomplishments, success stories from the fall. I also have some information in here. I think it was brought up in the last meeting about academic probation and how we're handling that with the athletes. So a couple of things from the fall. Obviously, number one, we have a new athletic logo. Obviously my kids have been here for a while. You see different wolves everywhere on apparel, walls everywhere. So we're able to kind of boil that down into one consistent athletic logo. I will say on that front, obviously we have an art teacher here who painted the logo that was on the gym floor. We actually brought someone in who took a drone photograph of that logo, and we have it on a canvas print that we gave to that teacher, and we have one thanking him that'll actually go up in the hallway here that's sitting in my office, just to thank Troy for all the work he put in. He told me that would take him about 50 hours to do back in the day when we used to do it. So we want to make sure we honored him while we were resurfacing the floor and putting the new logo on. New athletic handbook, which you all have seen, same across all 3 schools. It's going really well so far. I haven't had any real issues or pushback. Everything seems to make good sense that's in there, and we haven't really had a whole lot pop up. A new coach's handbook. Actually, I have a copy here. It's about 40 pages long. This is not policies, they're procedures. I'm getting really good at using those words. But honestly, it's checklists, our emergency action plan. There's some things in there about liability. What are the 7 things we need to pay attention to as coaches when it comes to liability? So we make sure we cover those when we do coaches meetings. Philosophy for the program. All of this is digital. We used to print everything and put it in this binder that would go in someone's car and then never be used the whole season. It was a giant waste of paper, money, all of that. So we actually put it on a Google Drive. We give all the coaches access to that Google Drive where they can print forms and see that handbook. They can also do like incident reports, everything right off of that Google Drive on their phone or print it on their computer, so we don't do anything in paper anymore. One of my core things that I really wanted to do here was bringing the 3 schools together, and I really feel like this fall we accomplished that with the amount of events that were going on from the middle schools here, bringing the community together, and I'll hit on a few of those as we go through. Fan attendance, we wanted to really make sure we drove that. There were a couple games this year that I think it was the most people I've I've ever seen here. Some were outside, some were inside. You know, homecoming, for example, we had a huge crowd indoors, we had a huge crowd outdoors under the lights. We ended up with 4 games under the lights. Little backstory on how that happened. We obviously lost the girls' game due to rain. Not for lack of trying though. I made about 45 phone calls that day, and I would have sold my leg to get them a game. And unfortunately, we were a little hamstrung, pun intended, by the NHIA and what we had left in our schedule. We just couldn't make it work. I did not receive a single negative email, not a phone call. The kids took it in stride, the coach took it in stride. We wanted to reward that and asked the company that had the lights here if we could extend to an extra day, and they were able to do that for us. They actually didn't want to come pick them up. They told us just to leave them here. So then we snuck in 2 senior nights with it, and ended up with 2 girls games, 2 boys games for varsity under the lights here. But I thought overall, homecoming was great. Our senior nights were obviously great as well. We had 8th grade night here for soccer and for volleyball, very well attended. Had great feedback from parents on those as well. We also introduced the Prospect Mountain Athletics Hall of Fame. Bubba was our first inductee. We do have a committee that we've pulled together. We put it out to our teachers here. I think we have about 5 or 6 folks so far. We'll be meeting to figure out a game plan, some infrastructure for how we, ultimately make selections going forward. Created the Junior Timberwolves, which is Alton and Barnstead girls soccer. First time that I can remember the 2 schools coming together to play. Had a fantastic season. Logistics were a lot. Thankfully, we were able to make them work, especially with buses. Coach Bill, who did that, did a great job with the team. We held our first middle school girls soccer tournament here at Prospect. We had 6 teams here. That came up because I was at a meeting with ADs. They had a boys tournament, and they said, hey, who wants to run the girls tournament? No one raised their hand. So I was the one who did. That's how it ended up here, but people liked it, and I think it'll continue to grow.
Minus the refs. The refs were done.
FYI, our team came in second. They only lost to Runlet, who was here. They're a Division I school. They were here with 2 full teams cycling kids through, and we lost 1-0 in the championship. So great season by them. Almost all of our coaching jobs are full right now for the whole year. They've actually been full basically since the middle of October. The 2 that we're still looking for is girls tennis, which we have an interview coming up very soon, and then our ACS baseball, which Jason Whitehouse has told me he will find someone quality to run baseball and all that. So we're working through that. Last thing I just wanted to, actually one more thing. SALT was introduced last year by the previous AD. Started strong and kind of fizzled as the year went on. One of the things I want to do is figure out how can we really make this program, work and be impactful. By the way, SALT is the student athlete leadership team. So we created it as what we call at the high school a pack. So every Thursday we meet for about 45 minutes or so. That allowed us to have some rhythm of being in front of the kids and working with them. We have 23 kids that are in the pack. We have a true kind of president, vice president, structure, a lot like you'd see like student council. What I'm trying to make the kids in that group start to think about is how do we do some things outside of athletics, even outside of the school, that shows our leadership in the community. So one of the first things we did is we had Senora come down, who's good friends with Jim Foley, and there's a whole awesome story if you ever want to hear it, ask Senora. She did a great job speaking to the kids. But we had, I think, 6 or 8 kids go up and actually do the Jim Foley run for the fundraiser. By the way, those same kids were stacking wood that morning for someone's neighbor. So just kids showing leadership outside of the field or even outside of the school, which has been great. I have one specific story I want to talk about. One of the kids in there, sophomore, I won't use his name, but we're talking a lot about respect our grounds here. This isn't Fenway. You can't throw your stuff on the ground in the bleachers, put it in the garbage, like those sort of things. And I happened to be talking with David one day, standing behind the bleachers, and I just saw in the corner of my eye the sophomore sees a bunch of kids get up, he walks over, picks up all the garbage off the ground, throws it in a dumpster. It was just a really cool sign for me that, like, all right, they're starting to get it. We did call that kid out during SALT just to, you know, say thank you and, you know, reward the behavior. So things like that are, I think, positives that we're starting to see. I tasked them with one big event that we want to do, and they decided to do a toy drive. And we're going to take, so when you do a pack, you can go take a field trip. We're going to put all the toys and all the kids on a bus and go to a children's hospital and hand out toys. So that's what they decided to do. So hopefully, like the third week of December before we go on vacation. Last thing, social media presence, Prospect Mountain Athletics. I think that page has really kind of taken off. We have good viewership. I try to make sure I keep it current with what's going on. We're in a little bit of a dead period right now. But last thing I'll mention is probably our biggest accomplishment is navigating the current situation with buses and officials. And it's not just a Prospect thing. It's definitely across the board. It will continue and it will get worse. That's just the reality. As we're looking at what's going on with getting kids from place to place and then having two officials, which is what you typically would look to have at all of these events, is becoming very, very difficult. So kudos to Amanda, who does the bulk of that. To give you an idea, for me, it's one of the things that's controllable, and I want to make sure it doesn't happen, right? So we send a schedule to the bus company. They get it well in advance. They mark their calendar. Every Thursday, traditionally, we would follow up and say, here's the week ahead. This is what we want to do. Are you good? That used to be okay. Now we call every morning at 10 a.m. and say, these are the buses that, are we still good? Sometimes they're still not there. That's the reality, but we had to institute a process that made us feel a little more comfortable to make sure kids were getting where they need to be. But you know, sometimes a 4 p.m. game may have kids getting there at 1:30, and that is the only bus that is available, which creates other logistical problems. But I think I'm very happy we didn't really miss any this fall. Hopefully we can do that again in the winter, but just so everyone's aware, it's going to continue to be an issue we have to deal with and everyone has to deal with. I just put some numbers in here because I think when I look at this, I kind of, it seems a little wild to me. There's 76 days in the fall season. We had 105 home games and 127 away games in 76 days. So you just think about the logistics to put all that together. For Prospect, we talked about the homecoming again, 4 games under the lights. We had 114 students in fall sports. Matt's been sharing, you know, the year over year on that. It was pretty consistent with what we had last year. I'm hopeful we start to see that increase with the successful fall that we've had, continue to see more athletes engaged. Alton with 75 students, again, pretty consistent with last year. They played 700 games here at Prospect Mountain. We also held a cross-country meet here at Prospect as well. Barnstead, 73 students, again, pretty consistent. We played 12 of those games here at Prospect, and we also held another cross-country meet here at Prospect as well for Barnstead. We are starting to already see some increases. We've introduced a Barnstead and Alton Spirit Squad again for the first time. We had 21 kids show up to open gym yesterday for the Spirit Squad, which is, you know, great news. All right, so now to the question you actually asked me.
Just remember, this is all posted online.
His goal was to not get invited back.
Oh, is that what it is? I see.
I want to make sure it's set up. Academic probation. So this is a newer process, the way that we put it together from the athletic handbook. To be candid, we followed it really well to high school and had some significant struggles doing it at the middle school. And we are working through some of the logistics of that now with the administration at both schools to try to find a way to make the 2 middle schools look and feel like what we're doing at the high school. So we had 38 kids in total in the fall that entered academic probation. This means they're on a team, they're failing at some point. We check grades every Monday. They pop up on our report, hey, you're in the 2-week academic probation cycle. We had 10 of those that ended up still being in the cycle after the 2 weeks. What happens at that point? You get an email saying you're no longer allowed to participate. You're still on the team, but you can't go to practice, can't go to games, those sort of things. And then we had 5 students that were still on it basically into the 3rd week. So we had a few instances of pulling kids off of a bus, not going to an away game, not being able to go to practice that day. When you consider the amount of students we're talking about, 114 over 76 days, and we only really had 5 that we had to actually take action. I thought that was a pretty good number percentage-wise for us. And most of those kids were passing that evening. They stayed here, they figured it out, they met with the teacher, or they were able to figure it out the next day. So the process definitely worked. The emails get people's attention, parents and player, and we will take this and make sure it's applied at the middle schools as well.
We appreciate all your hard work. We do. You have worked hard to make sure that athletics are going forward. I think it's very impressive that we went from 38 to 5. I think that's good, because they really woke up to the fact they had to do their work in order to participate. I kind of like that.
I just have a comment about that. I feel like it's working well because grades are being updated, like, better, at least from what I'm seeing, than last year. It's more consistent, and then I think the new retake procedure will help with that too, like, just in terms of making sure it's timely. And I don't always see that at the middle school level, that grades being updated. And then just a question about salts. Like, is it only in the fall that students can opt in, or is it throughout the year?
So we're not technically closed, but it was pretty much whoever signed up to start, like, you're locked in for the year. But we have added kids as the year has gone on, and that is an option.
Okay.
But basically, once you're in, is kind of the way we're treating it for the kids with the pack.
Right.
Any other questions?
Just about, I think Barnstead Volleyball played a lot of home games up here, some of about lines at their gym. Just with basketball season coming up, I know gym time up here is tough to come by, right? Girls usually like 3 to 6 and boys usually like 6 to 9. So are there teams coming up here to play or practice? What's kind of the situation there?
Great question. So, believe it or not, the floor has nothing to do with volleyball not being played in Barnstead. It's actually the roof.
Mm-hmm.
They haven't had a home game in Barnstead in years.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, we don't have a gym.
Yeah.
I bet.
Having it here was an upgrade, right? They've had to play all of their games away for the last, however long. So all of their games were here. They did practice there. We found out early that they had net issues. We fixed the net issues in the Barnstead gym. To answer your question, the lack of lines in the current CAF does present a problem. We're planning on moving their basketball games here. I'm not a big fan of holding a game where you don't allow opposing fans just because of logistical issues.
Mm-hmm.
So we were going to move them up here anyways.
Mm-hmm.
We just talked to Sean Asdot to figure out the type of tape we can use, and we will be taping some simple pieces of the court. So key, foul line, end line,
So they can
to allow
practice.
them to practice there. But all of their games will be here.
Gotcha.
An important note too, I want to make sure Alton didn't feel left out. So since we're moving all this Barnstead stuff here, we moved quite a few Alton games to Prospect, which again aligned with the idea of bringing the community up to the high school here.
Does that interfere at all with the current teams, like Prospect Mountain teams?
It does a little. I mean, we had probably 2 or 3 instances where we had some overlap, but what it generally does is pushes things back a little bit, so they've got to practice a little bit later. We are working with our schedule to try to find times where we have away games or days off where we can funnel the Barnstead games into the gym here.
Yeah, I'd say just my main concern is I just don't want Prospect Mountain student athletes being affected.
Yes.
because this is their home gym, this is their year, whether they're seniors or whatnot, so I just wanna make sure nothing affects their program or what they're doing on a daily basis.
Yeah, totally agree.
I agree. Any other comments, input? All right, thank you very much. So now we're on to Matt. No, technology, sorry, I skipped technology, I apologize. That Matt. So did anyone have any questions for Matt? He is here on technology. Did you want to emphasize anything, Matt?
Yeah, this year, the mandatory training, exceptional well, everyone had their training once ever.
I didn't hear a word you said.
So starting a couple of years ago, we took all of the training that's mandated by state and federal law for every school employee, and we created one electronic set of trainings, and then some of them have quizzes attached and things like that. So all employees at all 3 schools can take the same set of training. We give them a certain period of time to get it done, just because it's really not realistic to show up on August 28th and have it all done in the next 48 hours. But we allow several weeks. IT keeps track of it because everything's just date and time stamped when people have gone through and fulfilled all their obligations. It creates really valuable records for us. We don't have to wonder if people have done the training. We have very clear stamped records that they have. And I didn't have to communicate with a single staff member this year. That's like tier 3 of you haven't done it on time. And I never even heard a word about it this year. It just got done.
If it's self-directed, I think it's easier for teachers rather than sit in a workshop sometimes. All right, now the other Matt.
So a couple quick things. You already know about Trade-a-Palooza from the school counseling department. Again, we are continuing our journey on our embedded honors. As you know, earlier in the year, we did some data gathering with our current freshmen, and you can kind of see where the 4 areas that we focused on: classroom environment, clarity, personalization, and project-based learning. And what you see there is the data that was collected from those student focus groups. An overview of that's been shared with the faculty and staff. On November 5th, faculty members were asked to pick one of those 4 areas and set a goal for themselves between now and March, and how they're going to work on any one of those 4 areas. Also included in your packet, you have the 9th grade embedded honors curriculum build that shows you the guide over the 3 phases that we're working on this year. We started on November 5th with our revision and writing of our grade 9 curriculum. We'll continue that throughout the school year. We'll be utilizing those Wednesday mornings, sometimes Wednesday and Thursday mornings, for faculty to work on building that curriculum. We'll also be looking at some release days, but then follow up with our workshop in March as well as in May. As James mentioned a little earlier, next month I'll be coming to the board with our data dashboard, which will bring in discipline, truancy, some athletic stuff, also our core values. So that'll be some of the things that we bring forward to you. So, and that's pretty much it. I was asked about Wednesdays and Thursday mornings. I did reach out to the co-presidents of the union, and some of the information that they gave back to me was there are department meetings that go on. We'll be doing a lot of curriculum work moving forward through the month of December, January, February, March, and then we'll back off if necessary. There are other meetings that take place. I know that Dave meets with the department heads as well. So we'll continue to look at that and bring back information to the board, but that's specifically, they'll be doing a lot of the curriculum work because we'll need that time to complete the task of revising the 9th grade curriculum.
And it might be too early, but we're gonna need a recommendation whether we're doing that again next year.
Yep.
So we have to be thinking about that globally. Because some people don't like it and other people love it, so it's hard to tell.
Yep.
You know. All right, any questions for Matt? All right, we're on to our superintendent report.
So I sent memos yesterday via email. that's consistent with my first goal for this year, which is to get everything to you in advance of the meetings. And maybe I can make additional progress and be earlier than the day before as we move forward. I didn't drop them in front of you on the table tonight, so it's a small step forward.
One step.
And I do want to recognize all of our other administrators have gotten really good at this, so I'm the only one left. I have no choice. Regarding the rest, as I think you all know, Carol has been chairing a committee I have met with. We will meet again to follow up, and I'm open to their feedback and yours through them on the goals I've set for myself for this year. Regarding your strategic objectives, I hope you've had an opportunity to take a look at this. If you want to give me feedback right now and discuss it, fine. If you want to take more time and talk more, the only thing that's critical to me is if there's something you want me to stop working on, the sooner I know the better. And that is because we've got some trains rolling down the tracks. I am going to be called, I believe, as a witness at a State Board of Education hearing with a parent regarding open enrollment this December. I expect other processes relating to that to continue. You all know what's going on there. So as long as we are sticking with these goals set previously by the joint board, I put a lot of time and energy into these, right? These are the things nobody else can do, right? We have people who can work on curriculum alignment, who can work on scope and sequence with teachers, who can, bring together science of reading committees and work on school improvement. These are the things that really only your superintendent can do. So I know it's probably not just a tonight discussion, right? It's an ongoing discussion. But I think it's a very important discussion. And in my memo, I made reference to this. It was one of the things that I think this joint board, when I had never met any of them, some of you, I had never met any of them before. They were really good at articulating to me at that time what they thought their problems were and what they wanted to try to accomplish. So again, if there are any changes, I would appreciate figuring that out as quickly as we can, realistically. So I'll leave it at that.
So on the first page, you have the new goals.
So goals for me for this year, which I think are a little bit separate from the strategic goals for the school system, right? These are about me and my work. Some of them, one of you already reached out and observed, other people do some of this work, and that's true, but I set the tone, I lead this work. I gave a shout out earlier in this meeting to the school counseling department, because we have employees in there who are willing to work on things that I've been asking for us to work on. And I think that my responsibility is to continue to set the tone, build consensus, and hold people accountable.
Right, that is your job. So we have the new goals, and then we have the other goals that we had discussed in August that Tim is asking for direction. Do we want to continue them? We have the strategic goals listed here, and he just wants our guidance as to whether we want to continue doing these goals. I personally think we do. I want to, but that's just my personal opinion. So, did anyone want to express anything about the goals?
This is what we set from way back when, and we're still going down that same track.
Right.
To try to get these things accomplished. And nothing was going to take overnight, so it's taken years.
Well, I think it's a growth mindset with these goals. I mean, a lot of them we're continuing to work on. The only area that, I guess, Matt, I think you shoulder a lot of the responsibility for the K-12 curriculum and assessment, and you've really been doing that. So that was the only sort of piece that, even though Tim is still involved, I feel like that's really, and we didn't have an assistant superintendent at that time. So I feel like that's been a little bit of a shift.
Sure, right.
Naturally, even though you're still involved.
I think for me, the way I would see my role with that is there has been, people say that change is hard. That's not exactly right. Change is excruciating. And I think that continuing to try to build awareness about things like when I first started teaching, so we're going back more than a couple of decades, I was taught differentiated instruction, differentiated assessment, heterogeneous versus homogeneous grouping. We're engaged right now, here, more than 20 years later, with some constituents, parents, students, staff, whoever they are, struggling with some of those concepts. So I think I see myself, Ann, operating at the level of, here's what these things are, here's why they actually can work, but we can also take our time to help people wrap their heads around what we have to ask them to do.
So if we wanted to become one SAU for the 3 schools, you said there's money available for that?
Oh, so
I had to ask.
yeah, no, it's on the list for this reason. I understand there might be a hard no along the way. Don't shake your head yet. Because it's a process. And the legislature passed a law signed by Governor Sununu after its last session that provides SAU consolidation grants to any group of SAUs who want to work over a 2-year period on potential consolidation. The grant is calculated as $200 per student enrolled in the combined system. Okay. So for us, $260,000 a year for 2 years. The Department of Education has not yet written the rules, come up with an application process, or figured out what strings or deliverables might be attached. I think I can be involved in those discussions with the Department of Education about what that's going to look like, and I expect that to start within the next few weeks. And then my plan is to come back, tell you what it is, how it works, what the requirements might be, and then find out if it's something that interests us. I know it's something that could, at least, potentially, but there also could be some conditions there that just become hard no's for either the board or the communities. So all I'm doing right now is working with the Department of Ed to figure out how they plan to administer this and what it's going to look like.
Right. I was
Yeah.
curious, because
No,
you
I
said
think-
there was some monies available.
Yeah,
Might be-
$520,000 split over 2
Sounds like
years.
it would be worth investigating.
It's worth
at least.
exploring, right. And I think continuing with the, refining and supporting the shared services. I think we've made a lot of great changes. I mean, we just heard the athletics has extracurricular activities, I feel like ACS, Barnstead, and Prospect have all sort of been working together, whether it be a play or athletics. So I think that's great. I think we've determined that through trial and error that some things work really well as shared services, some things like special education is a little bit more difficult. So,
And not just athletics too, the music department has merged students.
Yes.
So we've had concerts where they've had the
Thank you,
kids all
yes.
together, which is very fun to watch.
right,
To
and
have
the
all of
play,
them
right?
together. I'm sorry,
Wasn't there a play also?
I don't know if the play included.
Cross, no? Oh.
Not yet.
No.
Potential.
But
Okay.
the curriculum.
Chris is
too,
working on
like,
that.
Carol and I are on the literacy committee, but there's some great work being done there. And again, it's a process, but it's not gonna change overnight, but just to see staff from all 3 schools, like highly engaged and interacting and learning from each other,
I've learned a lot, I
really
tell you,
cool
it's great,
meetings.
it's a
Yeah.
great crew, very
It is.
open to new ideas, they've been working really hard at it. I think it's been good.
That's awesome.
A lot of homework.
Yeah.
There is a lot of homework.
Yeah, and they're getting, never mind. They're getting a stipend, right? Anyway, yeah, so it has been a great experience, seeing all 3 schools merging, the staff from the different schools, and now I'm getting an opportunity to meet a lot of people I didn't know before from Barnstead, even from Alton Central, and learning about some programs they're using there that I didn't realize they were using. So it's kind of interesting to hear, from Janice, who's also on that committee.
Right.
So I've enjoyed it a lot. It's energizing, a little tiring, but energizing. So,
I'll bring coffee next time.
yeah, coffee would be good. Yeah. So any other comments or questions for Tim about his goals? So as we do have that committee that we're going to be working with Tim on the goals, the new goals. The other goals were set in 2019, and you should be able to find them right on the website. These are gonna be posted too, correct? So the new goals will also be posted. All right, but if anyone on the board has feedback for the committee, make sure you let us know. Okay. All right, anything else, Tim, before we go on? Okay, we are on to action items. We already did the baby grand piano, we already did the handbook. The lighting bid, there you go, Heidi. There was a big difference in prices.
Yeah.
Huge difference. I mean, it's pretty easy to make a motion on this.
Yeah.
Make a motion for JM Electrical LLC for Alton, New Hampshire for a lighting project, total cost of $21,340.19, significantly less than the other quotes that we got.
I second.
Any discussion, questions?
I'd like to know what the recommendation was from Heidi.
JM Electric, yeah.
How quickly is that happening?
Do you know?
How quickly?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just really dark out there.
Yeah.
Like in the front of the building, it's really dark.
I'm not sure I can get back to you on that.
Well, once we accept it, we can find out.
Yep.
You know, we might not be able to find out until we accept their bid, right? Hopefully. All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All righty. Now we have the operating budget for 26.
I sent a memo yesterday for, I know we do have some newer members, just to sort of outline the process that the JMA goes through in its budget approval. So tonight, the question in front of the board is not, do you approve this budget? Do you recommend this budget for adoption by the legislative bodies and the towns? It is, do you want to send this budget forward to the Joint Budget Committee, which will meet 2 or 3 times typically during December, and then send back any recommendations they might have, at which point you're then asked to make any final changes you choose to make, and then you give the budget your recommendation, and it moves on to the town budget committees and the legislative bodies. And then the last thing is, this budget as a separate budget ceases to exist, in a sense, for approval purposes after you're done with it, because it becomes the Prospect Mountain High School assessment in Alton's budget and in Barnstead's budget. So it shows up as a lump sum for the most part in those budgets.
And it's really treated as if it was a contract. Which
It's like paying tuition to send the kids from each town to this school.
Eunice, were you gonna ask them to give feedback about a couple things? I can't
Yeah,
remember if this was.
has everybody had a chance to read? And I'd like to thank administration, and thank the members of the committee. I think we did a great job. We went through line by line several times, but then had questions about certain areas, and they've been highlighted in Tim's memo, but important that we never cut anything that would impact students. We wanted to be very careful. You know, we had concerns about the SPED department, the number of teachers, but it was our recommendation to leave the unfilled position here in case it's needed in the next year. But anything else, everything that we cut, there's no impact on the students or even the equipment that's needed for the students. We were very careful to look at current spending patterns, and, you know, if we made a cut like in science or we made a cut in the math for the books, the funding was there this year, and we left enough for next year so they could do what they wanted to do.
Yeah, I had a chance to read it today, and as I said at the beginning of the meeting, I was impressed with the way that you guys really went through it, and I feel like you caught some things that were savings that does not impact student learning in a negative way, but does save people.
And I will say the principal was very helpful because, you know, we were looking like the math books. And he'd say, well, you know, they haven't done this and, you know, I wouldn't cut it completely, but
Yeah.
you can cut it this amount. So he was very helpful in several areas.
Good.
And we got to meet in the morning, which was great.
I'm sorry?
We got to meet in the morning, which was great.
Oh, that's nice.
We were all available in the morning, so that worked out well.
Well,
Fresh and
she
right.
complained about it was bedtime.
I'm what? Say that again?
You were complaining it was, you passed your bedtime, so.
Yeah, it was past my bedtime. I had to go in the morning, so. All right.
So I make a motion to accept the fiscal year 26 PMHS operating budget.
Second.
Any other discussion, questions? Did everyone have a chance to look at it?
Skimmed it.
Enough to know that you're okay with it?
Well,
I mean, just one last thing, even in the memo, you can see that there are things that we have no control over.
Yeah, that's the
The
big
health
gap.
insurance is huge. And the change in the pairs, it's really shifting them from funding at the high school versus funding at the local district.
Right.
With that, the shift in how we're funding paras at the high school, I do need to bring you, in addition to the joint maintenance agreement itself, there's a special education memorandum of agreement between Alton and Barnstead that we will need to amend. We talked about this a little bit last year. I need to bring you some amendment language for that to support this way of doing this. But in short, at the high school level, one-to-one paras exist, but are pretty rare. And we have now, I believe now, as of this current year, the number of shared para-educators at this high school is justified by student needs written in their IEPs. It has taken a few years to get that really well documented and to arrive at this point, but we're there. The previous way of funding para-educators, though, relied on most of them having one-to-one assignments and only working with students from one of the two towns. So in the past, there were times when a student might be absent and administration actually had to really think through what are we allowed to ask this employee to do, because we want to make sure they're working with a student from the town that's paying their salary. This turns them into shared operating expenses, just like the teachers are. We don't calculate who's paying for teachers based on how many kids are taking French 2. We treat the teacher as an operating expense under the terms of the joint maintenance agreement. And that's what this does as well. So I do need to bring you some language
Will that be next month?
for that. I can do that next month. It's relatively easy to do, and we have planned this for the last over a year.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? So we have a motion on the table. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we're on to our agreement, which we talked about in non-public. That's all settled now, so we're on to the policies.
Make a motion for first reading of policy EBVC, emergency care and first aid.
Second.
Any questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Next policy for second and final reading, LDA, student teaching and internships.
Second.
Any questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, our next item is personnel. We have a list of people. There's one person retiring. There's no action needed on any of these. Basketball
Except
coach.
the retirement.
Oh, sorry.
Make a
I do it.
motion to
It says no
accept.
action.
Oh, it's Glenn. So it's a support staff member, so I've accepted his retirement, and we're already starting to
So
try
I'm
to
not going crazy.
negotiate
It
a
does say
post-retirement part-time job for him.
You went crazy.
I
Because
wasn't crazy. It just
nobody
said
wants
no
to see him go.
Read the same thing.
All right, so no action was needed. Any questions for David or Tim about these? Okay. All right, Second public input.
Hi, I'm Kim Pika. I just wanted to say I've heard some positive feedback about the cell phone policy and students doing a good job with that. I think that those same standards need to be applied here at the school board meeting with our leadership.
Any other public input? All right, in that case, I'll close public input. Future agenda and follow-up items.
Stride School.
Yep, K-12 agreement, special ed MOA. There will be a policy committee meeting between now and your next meeting, so you can look forward to a list of policies, I'm sure.
Can you maybe also look at the impact that our wonderful Ed Bloom put out, that's going to be less funding for special education, or how that might be an impact?
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, that's easy.
Thanks.
I guess it's already, I asked that question at our finance committee, and the funding is already in the budget. We get reimbursed for the money we spend on special ed. So the state of New Hampshire is not going to be reimbursing us as much as we usually get reimbursed. So essentially, we just have to deal with it as taxpayers.
But I can quantify that, and we'll bring you some detail.
I mean, some people know that budget's being built right now too, so that might change. But the Ed Bloom education is not planning on putting more money in there, actually student level, and which is not going to meet the needs of students, so we may have to spend more of our own local dollars.
So the state's special ed reimbursement funding hasn't been cut, but it has been level funded, and requests from districts for reimbursement have increased, which means that we all end up being reimbursed a lower percentage of our qualifying expenses. But I can quantify what that might look like here.
Okay. With the special education MOU, should we have Paul here, or I don't know if he should be, I'm assuming,
Sure.
Does he want to come to our board meeting?
Do you want me to ask him if he wants to? Do you want me to ask him if he will?
I don't know. Is it necessary if we're?
Probably not for the MOU.
Okay, that's what I'm asking. Is it necessary for him to be here to give us input? No? Okay. Anything else you want to add? Our next, we don't need to go into non-public now, we already did. So future meeting date will be December 17th.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
I just wanted to ask one more question. Sorry.
Nope,
I
sorry,
know you
Carol,
have a
you're cut
deadline.
off.
I know you have a deadline. So I've never been on the finance committee before. Do we meet with the budget committee before the 17th or after? Before?
So 2 of you meet with the joint budget committee on a schedule that Debbie is working out with the chairs of the Alton and Barnstead budget committees right now.
Okay.
If history is an indication, there will be a meeting scheduled during an evening the first week, the second week, and the third week in December. And if recent history is an indication, the joint budget committee might get through the whole budget the first night, cancel its second meeting as a result, and then come back for a public hearing and its recommendations the third week in December. That's what's happened the last few years.
Then we go before the budget committee after that?
So it depends on when they invite us.
Okay.
We'll go to Barnstead 3 times during January. We'll go to Alton when we're invited during December. And in recent years, it has been, we might get a call on Monday and they want to know if we can be there Wednesday. And we've done it. We can do it.
Well,
So
because of
whatever they
SB2,
need.
We have different deadlines because of SB2.
It's
than
earlier,
Barnstead
yes.
does, Right.
That was my concern with the schedule for our next meeting. Are we gonna have, you were talking about when the joint budget committee meetings are.
So the night for their final meeting being the night before the JMA meeting would be ideal, wouldn't it?
Would be helpful.
So we'll see if we can work that out, right, Debbie?
Unless, I hate to do a phone call.
That would be perfect, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Yes.
And why did I volunteer to be on this committee?
And if the Alton Budget Committee wants to hear from the school earlier this year, we'd love to go earlier.
I'll propose that tomorrow night.
Yeah, and
don't see why we can't make
But
that happen.
it's entirely up to.
So they can meet
They have a lot
earlier.
of departments to see
Right.
in a pretty short period
I
of
thought
time.
you
Seen
got
quite a
through
few.
most of them.
We've already picked through a lot, so.
All right, I'll just ask them tomorrow night if we can meet earlier. How's that sound? Isn't that nice of me?
Whatever they want.
And then 3 reps. That didn't happen in the past.
So sometimes we only get 2,
Okay.
but the JMA allows for 3 members of each town's budget committee to serve on
We
the
would
joint budget.
prefer 3. It would be-
Of course, we would prefer 3,
Okay.
but we're grateful for anyone who shows
I'm
up.
just trying to muddle through the process. Okay, now you can make your motion to adjourn.
I mean, repeat.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
Here, I'll even pound. There you go.
There you go, Carol. Get
Happy
those
on the
knocks
gavel.
in.